Absolutely. Thank you very much for your question. And I'm very glad that there is a connection to Rotterdam here. It's one of my favorite cities in the Netherlands. You are referring to very good points about the fact that there are other initiatives, there are other actions going on, but they are not connected with each other. And that's one of the first steps in terms of audit. What else is going on? And how can we connect them with each other? What is the niche of that specific initiative that the other ones do not have? Is there overlap with them? And again, from my experience working in development aid, I have seen firsthand how there are so many projects going on at the same time on the same subject for the same target group, because the ones who are offering it are not just communicating with each other. And it's a very silo world. So what we need to do after we run our audits, we see who is doing what, how can we connect them with each other. And that's in terms of your colleagues who you say they don't know why we should use SDGs, that's the step of understanding as well. Because if there is no urgency from the group that you are trying to mobilize, they would never mobilize. And how do we create that urgency for them is to show, for instance, what will happen if we take that out, if it's already being implemented in some ways, or how can we say this is going to make our work more effective and efficient. So giving more information to them, but that needs to come beside the urgency side. It needs to come from a coalition that has the power. And power is not always about who is on the top ranking in the organization. It could come also about an expert in the field that is quite knowledgeable, and if it's coming from that person, it is taking at a different level. It could be also somebody who has among your colleagues who has a deeper connection with everyone, who has been around maybe for 5 years and is at a personal level connected with his colleagues or her colleagues, and him or her can encourage others. There are different layers of connecting and using the connecting power to mobilize groups. And that's where, again, you can get that understanding at your audit level to see who knows what, who is connected with who is doing what, and then bring that together, create the feeling of urgency for that, and set up a coalition that can move this forward and then take it from there for building the communication and so on and so forth. Right. Yes, very good question. So when we talk about partnership, the one that I'm specifically referring to in my research is cross-sector partnership. And by sector, I'm taking into account three groups that are derived from the notion of balanced society. In a balanced society, we have the government, we have the market, and we also have the civic space where civil society and academic institutes sit in it. There is always an interaction between these three elements, and they keep each other in balance. So when a government is not doing enough, the civil society pushes that, like for instance, we had in the Dutch context, we had Urgenda, who pushed the Dutch government on lowering the emission. So that's the role of the civil society, to push the government. Then we also have the market that, for instance, there are a lot of companies now taking a lead in achieving SDGs. Robeco, for instance, as an investment company, they are specifically working on projects that has an SDG element in it. They are running a lot of Nexus projects and Nexus impact investment. So there is a collaboration between these three elements. When it comes to programs funded by the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where I am working, they are, it's semi-cross-sectoral. Why semi? Because we have the Dutch government, of course, as a governmental institute, as a donor, institutional donor, participating in these partnerships. And then we have the Dutch organizations, which are part of the civil society, and they partner up with local organizations. And sometimes these local organizations are also civil society organizations, but sometimes they are local businesses that they work with. So it's a semi-cross-sector partnership. And then definition among these groups on partnership is very important. Previous research by Partnership Resource Center at Erasmus University from the previous partnership programs that the ministry run show that a lot of the organizations who are in this partnership actually do not have a similar understanding of partnership. They even do not know how the other partners are perceiving the partnership. And that's a hindrance in the impact that they may have. And as a result, it's very important that at the very beginning, we be very, very clear on what do we exactly expect and what do we exactly mean by partnership. And that's in the process of our audit and the process of our setup. When the group gets together with that coalition who is the partnership that is gonna be defined, they need to write it very clearly and talk it out very clearly on what is it that we mean by partnership. And then you asked about the programming. That's the roadmap that we write. In fundraising, for instance, there is the strategy that for the organization that we develop, and then there is a strategy for the fundraising, saying that in the next 5 years, we want to raise 5 million, and these are the resources we are gonna tap into, and this is how much we are gonna raise, and how much it's gonna cost us. This is a strategy. But then you need another plan next to it on who is gonna do it, how long is it gonna take, on what timeline, and who is gonna monitor it, and so on and so forth. And usually, the second element is missing. And that's why it's very important to create a roadmap that, or write a strategy that is implementable and it's realistic. When a partnership develops a program, they are developing it together. They are working together. So at that top level, when it starts, they develop the programming together as well. They must do it. Otherwise, every partner is doing their own thing and there is no conversation. Thank you very much. It's a very good question. It needs to be two-sided. It needs to be old and young, the same as with the white and other colors. And it needs to be from the government, from the civil society, from the market, all together. And yes, we put an emphasis on youth because we are talking about their lives. I am almost 40. I hope to, technically I count still as a millennial, but we are gonna inherit this world and pass it on to others. So of course, they are at the center, but we need to also remember that the youth does not have all the knowledge and expertise. So we need the elderlies, the ones who have been in the field for a longer period of time. When we set up the coalition, the partnership, that's where they need to come to the picture. Because as an example I gave to another colleague here, we need to look into who has the network to mobilize more groups. If I had a conversation with one of my colleagues that there is a generational gap, of course, between me and a 25-year-old. And if I want to mobilize 25-year-olds, I need other 25-year-olds to come to the picture and move them, because there is a gap between us. And when we set up our coalition, we look for people who have the network, who have the capacity to mobilize others and move forward with it. So definitely at the very beginning, at the understanding level, when we do our audit, after we do our audit and we build our coalition, that's where the youth should be involved at the very beginning.